Yeah, so thank you and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And the great thing about meeting on Zoom is we get a far better attendance than if we held the meeting in the town hall, especially on a rainy winter's night. So I'm not going to say much about the People's Jury process because that's already been said at a previous meeting, and you can read all about it on the Lancaster City Council website. And Caroline, I think you're putting a link in the chat to the People's Jury recommendations. But I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who participated, all of the jury members, and especially to Shared Future, who ran this absolutely incredible process, because they've given us a huge gift with their recommendations. And I know there's a few of the jury here tonight because they're really interested, having developed those recommendations, in staying involved and seeing them through. And one of the sentences that really struck home in their introduction was that the people of Lancaster District need to see competent leadership, positive changes made, and a clear plan for the future. And I believe that Lancaster City Council is really up to that job. We have an ambitious plan to reduce our own carbon emissions to net zero by 2030. We're not here tonight to tell you all the wonderful things the City Council are doing, like making Saltaire Leisure Centre seriously reduce the carbon emissions by installing solar panels so they can, for the electricity, putting in heat pumps, double glazing, and so on, and switching our fleet to electric vehicles and so on. Again, if you're really interested in finding out more about that, you should find that plan on our website. You're going to be meeting some of the cabinet members and councillors who are leading on our priorities of addressing the climate emergency, building the local economy, and making sure that we involve the whole community and don't leave anyone behind. Because we declared in our climate emergency declaration that not only would our own emissions be reduced to zero by 2030, but we'd also support all other relevant agencies towards making the Lancaster District zero carbon within the same timescale. So those priorities, we have, of course, our leader, Councillor Lewis, who's put those priorities absolutely front and centre of everything we do. There's Councillor Hanson, who's leading the local plan review, and the local plan is one of the key tools that we have in our armoury, if you like, to address the climate emergency, and it's currently being reviewed to make sure it's as robust as it can be to address climate change. We've got Councillor Evans, who's leading on community wealth building, which again is a key part, relocalising the economy. And if anybody was on a seminar a couple of days ago with Kate Raworth and the leader of Preston Council, then you would have heard climate change mentioned in almost every phrase. And then we have, of course, Councillor Whitehead, who's leading on integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into our everyday processes and everything we do. And Councillor Parr, who's leading on community engagement and also arts and culture. So you have a fabulous team of cabinet members and councillors who are not only working hard to bring all those priorities into what the council does, but they're also there to help you and help us realise that ambition that has been stated so clearly by the People's Jury, because there's nothing in those proposals that we don't want to take forward. The challenge is that we will be stretched trying to do much of it ourselves. There are things that the council have got responsibility for. We can do those. There are many, many other things that belong elsewhere. They belong to the government or the county council, or they belong to individuals or businesses. So I just want to say something about the process tonight. We're going to hear in a minute from Food Futures, because quite a few of the recommendations concern food, and Food Futures are really committed to doing what they can to take the recommendations forward. And it's really the best way to go forward with a lot of these recommendations, led by the community with support within our powers and capacity from the City Council. And with Food Futures, we do things like providing match funding, providing land where we've got it, meeting space and officer support. So I suggest that is a model for us all in all the other areas to take things forward. So I'm hoping that what will come out of tonight is that everybody here will find some way to get involved. This isn't about us telling you what needs to happen. This is about you, not just saying what needs to happen, but also saying what's your commitment to making things happen. So you're going to be in separate groups after Food Futures. You're going to have a chance to say what you think. We're using something called Mentimeter because there's too many of you to all have a say. So that'll be explained. You'll get a link to that in your group. But one of the things that in addition to everybody here, and that's 120 people, that's amazing. But there will be lots more people who are not here tonight. So have a think about other people you know who might also have some passion, some skills, some knowledge that could be really useful in meeting that target of getting to carbon zero. Because it's up to all of us to create a safe and prosperous future for us and for future generations. And we haven't, there are things left out today. We haven't, we're not talking tonight about the need to adapt to the consequences of climate change so far. Doesn't mean we've forgotten it. It means we've just got a limited time. So if you're interested in, many of you will be involved in flood groups, flood action groups and things like that. If there's anything that you want to be involved in that's not on the agenda tonight, then just get in touch and you'll be told how to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to Anna Clayton and to Ellen to talk about Food Futures. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my name's Anna, and I'm one of the coordinators for the Food Futures Network and Partnership. I'll just let Ellen introduce yourself as well before I start going to the presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen. I'm the coordinator for the Farm Start programme in Lancaster and the Northern Real Farming Conference.
Great, and we have a presentation that we've pulled together that we're going to share. If there are any questions that come up when you're hearing it, just feel free to put it in the chat and we'll try and come back to them or answer after. So I'm just going to share my screen. So I kind of, before I want to start, I want to echo what Kevin has just said, that if we are really serious about meeting the challenges of climate change and meeting that net zero target by 2030, everyone has a role to play in doing that. And our different roles may be very different. Some people will be bringing cakes to meetings to make them fun. Other people will be fundraising or taking forward projects and helping shape up businesses. But we really do believe that everyone has a role to play, no matter how big or small that may seem. And that kind of underlies a lot of our approach to the work we do around food. So for those that haven't heard of Food Futures, we're North Lancashire's Sustainable Food Network, and we started and came out of a very small group of volunteers back in 2014. So the idea for this partnership and our structure came from the food group of Transition City Lancaster that was looking at how we could shift our local economy and society towards net zero. And within the food group, which was maybe one of the more active groups of that transition network, there were so many great food projects happening locally, all community-led, very grassroots in nature, very spontaneous and organic and reactive. We were wondering how we could upscale that, or if you don't like that term, scale out that work, to try and see how we could make that or help spread that passion and energy. And at the time in the UK, we were fortunate to have this model that had been presented by a coalition of organisations called the Sustainable Food City model. And we felt that it offered a useful framework to look at how we might upscale that great community-led food work in the area. So from that very humble beginning where we were all meeting monthly as a small group of volunteers, we decided to commit to trying to scale up this work. And we renamed ourselves Food Futures in 2018, I think. And we managed without any paid capacity at all for many years. And we sparked a number of local projects and initiatives, but we never really got anything going to the scale that we have maybe now. We're seeing a lot of momentum building. And so for us, we were fortunate that this Sustainable Food Cities network existed, and they were willing to give small amounts of funding for coordinator roles to try and network and skill up or connect localities around food. So in 2018, we applied for this coordinator grant, and that was the first time we had any paid capacity, and it was 2 days a week. And from there, we started holding a number of meetings where we tried to bring people together across the food system. And from there, so many ideas emerged, and we were able to take them forward, and we managed to do enough work, enough connected work, to get that bronze award at the end of 2019. And so that bronze award is part of an award system that the national network has that recognises that places are committed to taking up a joint up collaborative approach to building healthy food cultures. And when we received that award, we held a strategy meeting where we invited people from across the food system again. And we asked if we wanted to continue this work and continue to try and go for the silver and gold awards and actually really like shift gear and upscale what was happening. And in that room, everyone said yes. And so we've continued that journey, and we now have 2 years coordinator funding that has been matched by the council to try and drive forward more collaborative working. So as a partnership and a network, we take a place-based approach. So we're looking at how we can connect people up here in Lancashire, North Lancashire, and we're seeking to offer a platform where we bring together as many people as possible and help build connections. So very much like the community connectors roles in the council, but with a food focus. And in many ways, the community connectors have been so invaluable and amazing at helping facilitate a lot of this work in happening. And I can't emphasize how much great stuff and ideas can come out merely by bringing people together and fostering that collaborative environment. Although we're place-based, we are connected to this national and international network of places taking a very similar approach, so we can share experience and knowledge and access to funding and all sorts of other things. So it's really useful having that connection, so having that local focus but still maintaining that connection to national and international places, as ultimately we all live on this planet Earth and everyone's facing similar challenges, and our trade systems mean that the food we eat is connected to the situation of growers and other food retailers in other places. And underlying our approach is this systems worldview. So, and this can be applied to any of the themes that are going to be discussed tonight. So we consider the issues that we witness or observe within the food system, whether that be food poverty or access to healthy food, whether it's around farmers not being able to have viable livelihoods, or restaurants and service industry closing when there's a pandemic, through to a health crisis and a food sector that contributes around, I think it's a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So all of these issues we consider to be systemic in nature. And by that, I mean, they're connected to political decisions, a certain economic structure, and the stories we tell ourselves as society, and our relationship to farmers and other people within the food supply chain. And so we feel that if you're going to tackle these issues, and the climate and ecological emergency is also very systemic in nature, you're going to have to approach these issues in a systems way. And so a lot of the solutions that we're seeking to come up, we hope taken a holistic approach to trying to address them and not just focus on single issues. Plastic is a classic example of this, where it's not helpful sometimes to just focus on plastic alone, but you have to see its role within a wider context. And the values that guide how we work come down to believing and developing and investing in training around collaborative, inclusive and decentralized working cultures, which is not the norm in a lot of institutions and some of the stakeholders that we work with, which is why we've over time realized that we need to be offering space for building up those connections. And we try to run our working group meetings in a way that gives people a voice, and we hope offers follow through and offers enough evidence of achievement and momentum to keep people engaged. So we do invest quite a lot of time in trying to skill up and cultivate that culture. We recognise that if you're talking about issues such as food, and this can apply to all the other themes tonight, we can't just focus on food skills, but we have to look at all skills, whether that's facilitation skills, business planning, through to design, and fostering creative approaches to solving the issues we're facing. In how we talk about our work, we are seeking to be aspirational and lifestyle focused. And you'll see that our approach to our strategy work comes from a place of hope rather than looking at the things that are going wrong. And so we try to bring that aspirational approach to how we work with people. And we really seek to harness local passion and expertise. We rarely say no to an idea, and perhaps that's naive and who knows, wrong. But we see a lot come from encouraging people to take forward the ideas that they have. And that's why we were so excited to see the People's Jury recommendations, which we thought were excellent and really showed a deep understanding of the food issue, and particularly its relation to climate change. So in reality, what we've become to look like in terms of how we operate is this. So we've learnt that if you're going to engage people across the food system, you have to create different spaces at different times in order to invite them in and create more opportunities for bringing in the different voices. So we have a number of themed working groups. So they include the Food and Environment Working Group, Food and Health, which has coordinated the Health Festival, the Food Economy and Procurement Working Group, which Ellen coordinates, and we'll talk about some of the work that's come out of that. The Community Food Skills Working Group. There's the Lancaster District Food Poverty Alliance, which is Feeding In and Out. And that, if we're talking about the role the councils played, they recruited Rachel Tyrrell Smith as a public health post within the council, and she's been incredible in helping build that link and make sure that the wider Food Futures stuff is aligning to the Lancaster District Food Poverty Alliance's work. And having that role within the council has been really helpful for us coordinating. And then we have this big picture steering group, which is made up of people with experience of strategy and movement building work to help offer advice on how we keep this network healthy and develop a strategy and how it guides our work. So all of these working groups have set their own decisions around how often they meet, what their focus is, who they invite, and representatives attend the quarterly partnership meeting. And something that's been very helpful with what the council's offered in the past couple of years is, well, the community connectors, they've made sure that they have representation on all of these working groups and the partnership, the core quarterly partnership meetings now. So that really helps to keep that link with the council and also builds on their great experience and wisdom as well. And what else? And when we weren't in a pandemic, we had the chance to use city council meeting space and have opportunities like tonight where we've been invited to present. And at the moment, you may be aware that we are in the process of developing a 10-year food strategy for the region, and this will hopefully feed into the Council's 2030 strategy. And the aim of it is to join up the different aspects of food, how it connects to climate and the ecological emergency. And in many ways, it seeks to be a guiding North Star to help us focus on what we need to do in the next 10 years if we really are to shift our food system to being net zero. And as part of this strategy development process, we just said from the start, we will take forward the People's Jury recommendations, because the process that they had gone through it was just so well designed and representative of people within our district that we couldn't ignore that. So we've taken those recommendations forward, and we've presented them at every single strategy morning to try and raise awareness of what has come out of them amongst the various stakeholders that have attended our meetings. And in the next month, we're running a number of other activities that will build on our strategy mornings that we held in December and January. So we've got, we're holding a community conversation on the 20th of February. So this is separate from the Wellbeing District community conversation, but we're also holding one on the 18th that's focused on food poverty and access to healthy food, which is being hosted by the City Council. We have a DIY visioning activity that any of you here could run with a group that you're involved with. We have resources and facilitation tips on how to do that. We're running an art competition called Paint Our Future, which is seeking to get children and young adults across the district involved in imagining what they want our district to look like in picture form. And then we have a survey that you can go through. And again, that survey is trying to get you to think about a positive future in 2030. And then we have a number of very targeted focus groups to make sure we're bringing in voices that so far we've noticed are weaker. So just this afternoon, we had a farmer focus group with farmers from across the district representing the different sectors to make sure that their voices are feeding in. And I can put all these in the chat if you want to get involved. So I'll invite you to get involved. And so, yeah, I just want to reiterate like how invaluable having the City Council on board has been. So the community connectors have attended working groups and helped us connect up with key stakeholders. And the experience that they all have brought has been invaluable. So ideas such as the youth forum have come out from some of the community connectors, and it's an idea that we want to take forward. Alongside them, having city councillors and officers attend these working groups has also been invaluable, particularly those that have an interest in food. They go above and beyond their call of duty, I'd say, to help us take things forward. And again, Gina has just been given food on her portfolio, which I'm sure is going to become a really helpful link again with the council. And I've already mentioned Rachel and her responsibility around food poverty amongst many other big health related issues is also been really key to taking forward some of this coordinated work. And then for the last year and this year, we've been match funded by the council. So we get £10,000 from the national network, and the council has matched that to enable us to have both me part-time and Kiki, who focuses on communications and marketing part-time. And there have been other ways that we've been supported, from the commitment to be able to use Lancaster Town Hall as a venue for the NRFC, and Ellen will talk about that in a minute, from having access to growing space, to allowing us to help co-design the community conversation around food poverty and access. And then we've also run activities alongside council services, such as the seasonal markets that we've run in the past. So Ellen, I'll hand over to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Can I just say we are over time, so probably another 5 minutes max. Yeah, thanks.
Sure, thank you. I'll be very brief. So we just wanted to provide a couple of illustrations, I guess, of some tangible projects that have worked really well. And these two projects in particular that I'm going to talk about are located within the food economy and procurement work groups. This is all about building a thriving local food supply and increasing demand and understanding and awareness of local food systems. So the first one is around a farm start training program. So one of the questions that was being asked about 3 or 4 years ago was, if some of the larger institutions in the city wanted to procure local food, would we actually have, were we growing enough food? Was the food within the district that could be procured? And sort of out of that idea, we undertook a feasibility study to look at what the demand was for local food, whether people were interested in training to be local growers, and what kind of project support would be needed around that. And I guess the council have been working, with us alongside us in this project all the way through, right from some initial conversations about kind of community wealth building, to now, when hopefully tomorrow we get back confirmation from the council of the lease of a polytunnel at the Whiteland nursery site. So that's a really good example of where the council's been able to provide some space for the project, which currently isn't being used, which will enable us to have an indoor growing space. And I guess the other example, again, just very briefly, one of the ideas that came to the Food Futures Network about a year ago was the idea of having a Northern Real Farming Conference. So this again was about building capacity for regenerative farming techniques in the north of England, but also locally. And we took that idea to the council, and they were pleased that with the alignment of that with the kind of climate mitigation actions that they wanted to take. So they were offering to host the event in the town hall for us, which was significant for us as a new project because it enabled us to leverage that and get additional funding into the project in order to make it happen. So for brief, just two examples of how it's worked really well to have the council alongside us in some of these projects.
Yeah. And just to finish off, the learning that we've had from the process we've undergone, and I guess we hope that this learning could inform how people might approach the themes tonight, is that long-term paid coordinator time is essential for taking forward this sort of decentralized coordinated approach. If you don't have someone holding it, it can progress, of course it can, but there are ethical questions around whether you should rely on volunteers alone, and don't underestimate the amount of work that it takes to just connect people up. I'm sure we're all very aware of that. And again, having that long-term and stable two-way connection between the city council and other stakeholders, and whatever partnerships emerge around the themes. It's really tricky to take forward work if people are always swapping and changing in their roles within certain institutions. The NHS has been particularly tricky to work with, but the same could be said of the council potentially. So how can we get approaches that are cross-party, that are long-term and have long-term support? That's a question or thing that should probably be thought through. And having collaborative, honest and transparent working cultures is essential around this area, because to tackle climate change and the various changes that are going to be needed around all the themes requires us to be honest about the changes that we each are going to have to make, and as businesses and as farmers and growers and teachers and everything, it's going to affect all of us. So being honest about that is really important, and being supportive of people on that route is also key. And yeah, we've shared our model very briefly. We haven't got much time, but don't try to just copy it, because I'm not sure it will work for all of the themes tonight. Like the theory underlying regenerative design is that you look at the unique potential around each theme or topic, and perhaps there's already a really well established group locally taking something forward. So seek to look at what's going on and adapt the approach based on that energy, rather than trying to just duplicate another model that may have worked somewhere else but might not work for the district. And then I have some questions. It's great that all these themes will be discussed tonight, but there are common needs or things that will fit across all themes. So how can they all be linked up? And how do we get lots of money flowing into any strategy that comes out of all of these? We need to be making sure we're really investing in the ideas that have come out of the People's Jury. If the council's not able to access that, how can we make the most of all the unique stakeholders in our area to bring this money in, whether that's business, community finance, and alternative models for raising finance, or something else. It feels like we've got to be really creative in getting that flowing. Yeah, so I'll stop there. I'm sorry we overran.
Thank you so much, both of you. It wasn't about copying, it was about being inspired, and that, you know, you certainly have done that. So and set such a high bar. I mean, it always frustrated me being involved in transition that you know, I was the one holding the banner for energy, and you can see the Halton Loon Hydro in the picture behind me. It was a project I was involved with, which was very successful, but the energy was always on food. You know, that's what people were really passionately interested about. So the challenge now is, you know, if you're interested in getting involved in food, then you know where to go, and that's brilliant. But if you're interested in some of the other subjects we're talking about, some of the other things to address climate change, what can we do to catch up as quickly as possible and build that kind of ecosystem of projects and people and organizations? And as far as money is concerned, it seems to me that the money flows, the government and others want to know that anything that they put money into is going to have lots of really motivated, excited people behind it. And that's, you know, I think Lancaster is starting to create that kind of buzz and starting to attract. And you'll hopefully be hearing about some of the funding we've attracted very soon. So when you go into your groups now, just have a think about what you'd like what you'd like Lancaster to be like in a few years' time, but what you would like your particular subject, what would you like education to be like, what would you like travel to be like, what would you like energy and housing and everything else to be like in a few years' time, and a bit of blue skies thinking as well as some practical things. And as Anna said, groups that already exist, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel if there's already a bus users group and cycling groups and things like that. So, Caroline, do you want to explain what happens next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just mindful we've run over slightly. So do you still want to do 45?
Yeah, if we can probably go till 15:15.
Oh. Okay,
because it'll be a short feedback session.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. So what's going to happen in a moment is that we'll get an option on your screen to choose which breakout room you'd like to go into. So there's an option of 5. There's education, community engagement, zero carbon homes, transport, including walking and cycling, waste and recycling, and green energy. In each of the rooms, you'll be joined, as I said before, by a councillor and a council officer who will be your facilitators in those rooms. It'll be if I can just ask you to click on the one that you would like to join, and then you will be asked, do you wish to join? And then you can go into your rooms. If anybody gets stuck, no problems at all. I'll be here, so I'll be able to assign you to a room as well. So don't worry. I'm just going to change the length of time that we've got in the room, and I'm just going to open them now. So here we go.
Right, we've got about 15 minutes, and we're going to hear very briefly from each room. Who'd like to go first? Caroline, is somebody reporting back from yours? You're on mute. You're still on mute, Caroline.
Sorry, Joe or Kathy, I think, was going to report back very briefly.
Yeah, you've got 2 or 3 minutes.
I might be quicker than 2 or 3 minutes, Kevin. So we started talking about the skills and knowledge gap within the local trades and how we can try and support them, or what we need to do in order to upskill those local contractors and get more local contractors involved in signing up to be Trustmark accredited, which would help improve the options for people that are looking to take up the Green Homes grant locally. We were hearing about a specific example where somebody wanted to do some improvements on their homes, but the nearest local contractor was Garstang or Preston, and maybe making more links with Morecambe and Lancaster College in terms of supporting that wider remit. We were hearing about some really good initiatives. We had quite a decent group within the housing area, which we had representatives from Wales and from Scotland, and we were hearing about examples from Denmark as well around how what they're doing in their areas. So in Wales, there was a discussion about sustainable housing. And some examples of housing made out of hemp wheat, I think it was. So I think we were just waiting. I'm hoping that the link went in the chat for us to follow that up as well, and how throughout the lifetime of that house, it continues to take on CO2 emissions. Then in Scotland, hearing about an example around different finance options around green energy, and lots more in terms of the Denmark model linked to that as well. We then moved on kind of to start talking about the green belt, making sure that we're not developing on the green belt unless it gets to the passive house standard, and what we can be trying to do to ensure that the builder on those development sites really meets priorities. We had a bit of a discussion, I think, around what Section 106 agreements can attain, but probably not to the degree that some of the members of the group wanted it to go, as far as supporting other local residents around retrofitting their properties. And I think that's about my keynotes. Kathy, I don't know whether you've got anything else.
Just a couple of extra ones, Joe. There was a question about whether there's any data available on carbon emissions from new dwellings. There was an observation about the council's employment and skills plans, whether those provide an opportunity to provide training on retrofitting. So that's definitely something that we can follow up with Calico, our delivery partner, fairly quickly. And just about the VAT implications of undertaking retrofitting and whether more can be done so that homeowners can actually claim that VAT back.
So that sounds like a really useful conversation. How are you going to take it forward? Where does that conversation sit next? Caroline.
That conversation sits in the Housing Advisory Group meeting, because I think virtually every part of that fits into either my advisory portfolio or possibly Councillor Hanson's, and the first meeting of that is the 25th of February at 11 o'clock. So hopefully people who were part of that discussion and would like to take it further in whatever way we can work out that it will really make a difference. We may have several groups working as a result of this. If people could come along to that first meeting, that would be great. So some people possibly already got an invitation. If anybody else wants to be invited, please could you pop your email address into that, it will be kept, and I'll be able to get back to you with an invitation. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, so otherwise they can contact you, Caroline, can't they? C Jackson at lancaster.gov.uk. Yeah. Yep.
I'll put my email in.
Yeah, do that. That's great. Okay, who's next?
Shall I go, Kevin?
Great. Okay, Gina, then Alison. Go on.
Hi. Firstly, apologies to everybody in my group. We didn't quite get to the final bit about what next and some dates or how people can network. But again, I will put my email in and I'll make sure that we do provide a mechanism for some of the passion and the interest to take this forward that's outside some of the existing groups. So the really good thing was, firstly, that there are already quite a few groups already in existence. So we've got the Lancaster Bus User Group, and we've got Dynamo, and we heard from the parish council about one of their them being the first, the Carnforth Parish Town Council, developing a neighbourhood plan with the ambition to decarbonate, and could be the first and be rolled out into other villages and other rural areas. I want to just say some things about the recommendations to start with. I think it was felt that the recommendations around transport should be seen as the absolute minimum that's done, and that there's a lot more than can be done than came forward from the jury, but they were welcomed as some of the specific things that have been mentioned. One of the points that was raised is that the jury had recommended e-bikes in terms of modal shift, and there was a query as to whether that's really necessary, but somebody has posted in the chat how there was evidence given to the People's Jury on the evidence of e-bikes being the most efficient mode of transport in terms of calories per mile, and providing accessibility to non-cyclists or not currently non-cyclists, to make that switch from cars to bikes for longer journeys anyway. So even though some of us have been cycling without the E for a long time, we need to be open to these changes that are now available. So just to cover a couple of the other things that were mentioned, we're quite fortunate in the moment because we have the initial results from the first phase of the consultation of the movement strategy, or the public realm strategy, or the city centre strategy as we know it. And we heard from county about the 3 options that are going to be taken forward, and they're all about developing one sustainable transport arm on the east or the town hall side of the ring road, so actually removing the one-way system as we know it, excuse me, and the west side becoming a 2-way traffic system for motorised traffic as a basic. But then there's the other options about how to restrict or reduce some of that through traffic, either through a charge or possibly even a no through traffic zone. So the county will be moving towards that and be doing a consultation over the summer. And I think there was a sense that certainly from some of the comments that people would like to be more involved in some of those discussions before that goes to the public, some of the expertise that we have in the district. And then there were some details mentioned about making sure that we absolutely cater as a priority group for people with disabilities and access to the city centre. And I think finally, I would just like to say that it was recognised that the county has so much power over the transport system and the resources, and that can cause problems both in terms of access to getting change, access to those resources, and feeling listened to. So maybe that's one of the key things, is making sure that if we're going to pilot something in terms of travel in this area, that we really find a more satisfactory way of Lancaster being able to shape and feel listened to, and things get done from county when it comes from a well thought through perspective from those of us who live in this district.
Thank you, Gina. And I know you didn't have a chance to talk about it, but what's your idea for what happens next?
I think people might, I'm not sure. I think everybody here who's registered has left an email. So I will endeavour to make sure that we have at least one more leisurely meeting, maybe but a bit more structured around some of the themes that came out.
Okay.
If anybody wants to contact me and wants to host that or be involved in that, please let me know. So I'll post my email in the chat.
Yeah. And Caroline, could you post the Community Connectors email as well? So if anybody's confused about who to contact, they can just contact you and you can point them in the right direction. Is that okay? Great. Alison, do you want to go next?
Sure. So it was community and education, and we we talked quite a lot about education and realised that there's already a lot going on that can fulfil some of the jury's recommendations. And Jan talked about projects she's involved with in primary and secondary schools on carbon footprinting and climate change. And she's getting funding to educate facilitators, climate facilitators in schools. So that looks like a network that could be started. And the university, Lancaster University, is looking at a Morecambe Bay curriculum. We also talked about the fact because there was discussion of an education centre, but the Eden project, the first mussel shell due to open, is an education and outreach and community one. So maybe that could become the community centre. There was a desire to get parents involved as well as the kids, because we did a lot of talking about kids education. So there was a discussion about need to get parents involved in that as well. And looking at eco schools, there's a long established scheme in the area with eco schools, and the city council should be mapping what's already going on there. There was a plea, however, to be really careful about how we approach teachers who are under a lot of stress at the moment and will be even more so when we come out. So to really be clear about what we need and what is being asked for. Alistair was talking about the District 2030 plan and asking to get people involved. And there was talk about what's already going on. So for instance, the food working group and the education group should be working together, because the food working group is already in schools. So is that a way into the schools? And so talking about getting in on what's already going on. We discussed communication and messaging and the need perhaps for a 2030 brand, and to be really clear and to keep pushing back the message. And there were some people who were keen on getting involved in that. And also taking out information to where people are. So for instance, people are walking around at the moment, they're in Williamson Park. Shouldn't we actually be going and making use of the fact that people are out and about at the moment? And Paul brought up, I thought we thought a really interesting idea near the end is about that we're talking a lot about individual responsibility, but actually it's not just about telling people about the science, because we know if we just tell people about science, they don't necessarily do anything about it, that we've got to find ways to get people to do things. And whether it's an art project or a sharing scheme, if you can get people in communities to do things, you can use that as a way into the whole climate issue.
That's great.
That's
So
a whiz through.
thank you. So what next, Alison?
Well, Alistair, you should be asking that of.
Okay, Alistair, what next?
Well, I was just asking people to give their names if they're really interested. I said that we've got the beginnings of a 2030 plan internally with the council. The next stage is to develop one that's owned by the district. As the people's juries, it raised the issue of, well, what happens if political things change? And therefore, it seems to me that we need a 2030 plan that the people here, plus lots of people who aren't here tonight, are part of developing, co-designing, co-producing, whichever fancy word you need. Because and Alison, you mentioned it, there's enormous amounts of assets, abilities, all sorts of exciting things in the district. So as a next step, maybe, I mean, this is, so it's other people's responsibility, is to convene some discussions around this 2030 plan. As Alison said, we've already got some people with branding, promotional experience who are quite keen to get involved, and that might be a way of taking it forward.
Okay, so we've got the People's Jury recommendations, and to turn them into a plan for the whole district, because of course we've got a plan for the council, we obviously need to carry on talking and meet again. Erica, did you come in to say something there?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to say that we are having those conversations about how we broaden this into a discussion about Plan 2030, and it certainly would be awesome to have everybody who was part of these calls and is part of a whole lot of other calls to be part of that. So we'd certainly be interested in hearing from you if you've got thoughts or groups, and the best place to send that to is back through the community connectors. But we certainly are looking to have a whole lot of conversations, and it's a really great time to be doing this, obviously, because Food Futures is focused on 2030. The University of Cumbria is currently redoing its strategic plan to 2030, Lancaster and Morecambe College. So lots of these conversations that are happening can feed, hopefully we can feed in and link together, and it has always been our intention that the idea was to build something that was a district plan rather than a city council plan, and so it could be owned wider than the city council, so that it could hopefully have some longevity and broader support, and potentially a little bit of independence from the city council. But to work out how we do that, and we Kevin said at the beginning, trying to use the SDGs as a framework to help communicate across different organisations, because that is a global framework that's shared by many people. So hopefully you'll all be part of the Plan 2030 discussions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Erica. And thank you for your leadership on this. It's really, really, really inspiring.
Team effort, Kevin, you know that. This is all a team effort.
I am sorry that we're going to go over time. If you want to leave now, nobody's going to chase you or anything, but it would be good to just finish what we started. So Dave, I don't know if you or somebody from your group wants to feedback.
Yeah, I'll be brief, Kevin. Like some others, I think we ran out of time. But briefly, we heard from Anna, who we heard from right at the start, whose group are doing great things and got good ideas about food waste. And they're also working on a community magazine. And it sounds like there's potential for that to be about more than food. So I think various of us might have ideas about filling pages in that, which I'm sure Anna will thank me for. We heard from Michael of the Ethical Small Traders Association about a local bottle top collection scheme and ideas for sort of expanding that into various circular economy ideas. We heard from David about the Men's Shed, which is working on reuse projects as well as providing a great social benefit to men. We had a bit of a discussion about green garden waste, and that's about as far as we got, really.
So what next, Dave? Where's this conversation carry on?
I'd really like to try and sort of coalesce from the various community groups that are out there, and not all of them were represented, some sort of zero waste working group that can really come up with some good ideas for district-wide action.
Okay, so again, contact the community connectors or Dave if you've got his details, and we look forward to that happening. And last but not least, although it probably was least in terms of numbers, was the energy group. I don't know, Kate, whether you'd be able to just quickly summarise what happened.
Oh, hi. Yeah, we just, well, we talked about renewable energy and some potential projects that are coming through the Rural Community Energy Fund, which I'm helping to deliver in the Northwest. And John Blows talked about an air source heat pump project that he's doing there. We talked about things like the emerging markets for things like Octopus Agile tariff and how that's hopefully going to change the way we buy electricity. Talked a bit about nuclear, a bit about hydrogen. Is that a fair summary, Kevin?
A bit of everything, yes. And I think one of the things that came out of that is that there is so much going on at the moment in energy, and there are many conversations and about things like hydrogen and so on, that I think what we really need are some some meetings where we perhaps have different presentations, so we get a chance to understand a bit more. And when we can go out again and meet and join and go to places again, maybe a few open buildings and open homes, and where you can go and see and talk to people who've got these things. They've got these agile tariffs and these heat pumps and things like that, and batteries and things like that. So watch this space. But I think there was a small but committed group there. And particularly interesting was Adam Briggs's contribution from the NFU, because of course he pointed out farmers have got a lot of land out there. So a lot of this renewable energy can sit on that land, making the farmers some money and making everybody else some money and making us all renewable. So that was a good note that we can all end on. So please don't go away and forget that we ever had this meeting in a week's time. I know the danger with Zoom is you have 3 meetings a night, and this fades into the distant memory. Make a commitment now to follow your passion, and if it's not represented tonight, then tell us about it. Tell the community connectors about it. Say, I want to talk about this, and we'll do what we can. Okay, so whatever it is you're passionate about, if it's remotely connected with the things we've been talking about tonight, get in touch and stay involved. Okay, and thank you very much for coming. Good night.